The message from Washington was unmistakable. The new tariffs are here to stay. USA Trade Representative Jamieson Greer, speaking in a rare public clarification, made it clear that the decision to keep the 35% levy on many Canadian goods, those not shielded by USMCA protections, is not a temporary escalation but a sustained posture. His language, that the tariffs are unlikely to budge in current negotiations, signaled to markets and to Ottawa that the United States intends to hold the line, using economic pressure as a lever while broader diplomatic talks remain tense. For Canadian exporters, the comment landed like a cold splash of reality. Firms that had been cautiously optimistic about a quick thaw saw their hopes dim. Industries from lumber and aluminum to specialty food producers and component manufacturers had already begun adjusting pricing and shipment schedules to account for the higher duties. One mid-sized Ontario furniture maker, whose products were bound for USA retailers, admitted they had delayed a major shipment, fearing downstream cancellations or renegotiations once American buyers recalculated margins under the new tariff regime. Politically, the announcement further hardened positions in Ottawa. Prime Minister Mark Carney's team, already publicly framing the dispute as an affront to Canadian sovereignty, used Greer's statement to argue that Canada must accelerate trade diversification efforts. In provincial capitals, premiers from resource-heavy regions like Alberta and Quebec echoed that sentiment, with some calling for emergency federal aid to blunt the immediate pain on jobs and small businesses. "We can't bet everything on a quick USA reversal," one provincial trade minister warned, urging rapid investment in European and Asian market access. On Wall Street and Bay Street, investors recalibrated risk. The loonie weakened further, reflecting expectations of continued export drag, while Canadian equity funds with heavy exposure to cross-border industries saw short-term outflows. Analysts pointed out that the longer the tariffs remain, the more entrenched supply chain adjustments will become. American buyers will start sourcing alternatives, and Canadian suppliers will be forced to seek new partners, creating structural shifts that won't reverse easily, even if the policy softens months from now. Small and mid-sized businesses, often lacking the hedging tools of large multinationals, bore the brunt of immediate confusion. A dairy cooperative in Nova Scotia, who exports artisanal cheese to northeastern USA markets, reported that several specialty shops paused orders while they assessed price changes. Meanwhile, a startup in Manitoba that had built a niche exporting eco-friendly packaging to the USA suddenly found its contracts under review, with American clients citing uncertainty over future costs. These ripples underscored how far-reaching the impact of a fixed tariff policy can be, beyond headline-grabbing industries. Economists were divided on strategy. Some urged Canada to treat the standoff as a long game, accelerate trade deals with non-USA partners, subsidize affected exporters temporarily, and invest in domestic value-added processing to reduce raw export dependency. Others warned against overreacting, cautioning that retaliatory tariffs could spiral into a deeper bilateral retrenchment that would damage both economies. Given their integrated supply chains, holding the line doesn't mean surrendering, said one trade policy professor, but it does mean preparing for sustained friction. Public sentiment, already shifting toward Canadian nationalism in recent weeks, hardened further. Social media feeds filled with images of maple leaf stickers plastered on grocery shelves, and influencers ran segments spotlighting Canadian alternatives to once assumed American staples. The grassroots economic patriotism wasn't purely symbolic. Data from regional retailers showed spikes in domestic product sales, especially in food, apparel, and DIY home goods, as consumers sought to shield their own spending from external shocks. In the halls of Parliament, opposition parties capitalized on the standoff. Some criticized the government for not anticipating the escalation, suggesting more proactive diplomacy could have softened the rhetoric. Others used the moment to pressure for a Canada-first industrial strategy, calling for incentives to keep production local and reduce reliance on volatile cross-border exposure. Meanwhile, diplomats quietly worked on back channels, arranging a planned call between President Trump and Prime Minister Carney to explore limited confidence-building measures. The United States' posture also had its domestic rationale. Greer's firm stance was pitched to an American audience as defending USA jobs and sovereignty against what the administration portrayed as Canadian economic gamesmanship. Trade advisors in Washington framed the tariffs as leverage to extract concessions not only on tariffs themselves but also on broader issues, border enforcement, regulatory alignment, and even political gestures, such as Canadian recognition of foreign policy positions that had irked the White House. The messaging, therefore, was both economic and geopolitical. As the days turn into weeks, Canadian business leaders are quietly drawing up contingency plans. Some are accelerating automation investments to hedge labor cost pressures from shifting markets. Others are forming consortiums to bulk export to alternative destinations, pooling logistics to lower per-unit risk. At the same time, trade negotiators are evaluating whether a formal complaint to the WTO coupled with a targeted diplomatic outreach to USA congressional allies could create pressure points that encourage a future softening without ceding ground publicly. The picture is clear. With Washington holding the line, Canada is facing a prolonged economic pressure test, one that will force choices about diversification, solidarity, and strategy. If you want more insider breakdowns on Canada's biggest geopolitical and economic battles, like, share, and subscribe to West is Best. Stay informed, stay resilient.